Power Spike is brought to you by esportsbet.io. Remember to use our referral link below to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $200 on your very first deposit. There's plenty of predictions and wagers you can make through the end of the year. The League of Legends World Championship playoffs are just starting right now. If you want to get some crazy odds, well, maybe you put it down on Rogue at 7.7 as it stands right now. Take a little bit of a risk, maybe, but the payoff will be great. You can also predict in many other esports, including the International for Dota 2, the upcoming Counter-Strike Major, and all events through the end of the year. So now is the time to sign up.
Final round, fight! You win!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power Spike, where we are beating up bad opinions worse than that last video that you just saw. Dgon here with Monty and Dom. Welcome to episode 2 of Power Spike. That was great, by the way, Monty. Where did we get that?
Our editor, Danian's just amazing, and he comes up with this shit and just posts it to us, and I look at it, and I'm like, wow, another banger. It's so easy.
Yeah. There's no way to stop it from being great. Dom, we finished week 2. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. You know, everything started to become right in the world. We had the NA teams, you know, showing a little bit of life, but exiting 3-15, the worst performance ever. You had, you know, EU looking more like how you would have predicted EU coming into the tournament. So, I mean, I think that it was perfect.
Yeah, I hope you all at home are ready for the LCK LPL World Finals featuring special guest Rogue.
I'm psyched about this. This is an excellent playoff bracket. You know, there's just no shitters. We're gonna get good matchups and everything. Even the kind of bad teams like DRX and EDG are playing each other. So that will actually probably be a good series when it wouldn't have been if they were against other opponents.
Well, how did we get here? Well, let's find out together with our Galaxy Brain Club of the week. Boom. All right. All right, y'all. Week 2 in the books. Worlds group stage now in the books. We said week 1, we lauded how great the LCK and LPL teams playing to the standard that we expected. And honestly, how disappointed we were in the LCS teams and gave the props that we needed to for the EU. But then things here in week 2 don't go quite as planned as many EU fans had thought. What are the big takeaways from week 2, guys? Let's start with you, Monty.
I mean, look, I think we all knew that a lot of the EU teams might struggle a bit more, especially as the meta settled and some of the Eastern teams came online. I think it's so great that we got to see Rogue going through because of their strong week 1 performance. They were virtually guaranteed. The only team they really had to beat was GAM in order to almost guarantee that position, right? But I think it's good to have a team, obviously from the West within the top 8. It's a bit disappointing, obviously, with top esports. We'll get into the bug stuff a bit later, but I think we should shift the conversation a little bit into which teams lived up to our expectations, because I think we should review the teams and their progress so far, because we were dealing with the new meta, and I think the unique angle that we can chat about here is which of those teams really that we thought would do well came out and did well, which perhaps are underperforming right now, because that the standard that we set, I think, is fascinating, especially as we go into predictions for the rest of the event. And obviously, for me, Gen.G was really underwhelming in the first week of competition. It was nice to see them kind of slowly powering up over week 2 into a dominant tiebreaker win versus RNG. But we still have lots of questions because RNG was obviously, if you were looking at those player cams,
Holy
pretty
moly.
fucking sick, right?
I don't know. I don't know. It didn't seem like any of the casters were mentioning that no matter what. It seemed like they were just told like deliberately, like, do not, I swear to God, if there's anything you can't do on this broadcast, it's do not mention that these fucking players have COVID. And while they're just like coughing up a lung, Ming has his fucking head down during draft. There's a point where he just has his head down for like a minute straight. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty it was pretty disingenuous the way that people framed the matchup.
Right. Yeah, and like we also don't know because Gen.G had COVID earlier. Maybe they didn't get as much good practice prior to coming into that matchup. There are just so many mitigating factors. Now we got the announcement. What is it? Yagao has COVID now, and
All of EDG.
yeah, hopefully by the time quarterfinals end, everyone will have COVID, so they can't get it again for a while. And then we've got some really banger semifinals and finals. Everybody's getting the plague is being passed around. But yeah, I think if we look at what's happened, like for me, Royal has also been like a very pleasant surprise. We expected them to be a lot better in this meta, but I don't think we expected them to be this good. They're kind of like a tournament dark horse at this point in time, especially when they're healthy. I think probably, obviously, we could talk about top disappointing, but they also were League of Legends out of the tournament.
Multiple ways.
They were spaghetti coated out of the tournament. JDG looks great. I think like they're the team that for the most part is the most encouraging and probably the favorites right now. Dom1, we expected to look better. They have looked better. They played, JDG and Dom1 have been by far the most entertaining games so far at the tournament. It was our banger of the week last week. T1 also looks better. I guess for me, the surprise is I thought EDG might do a little bit worse or at least be competitive with Fnatic, and that didn't turn out to be true at all. EDG was significantly better, and Fnatic kind of fell off after a better start to their Worlds run. So yeah, I think that's kind of taking a look at it. You have the overperformances and underperformances. I think JDG is the leading candidate right now for world champion, probably followed by Gen.G in their current form. But again, it's been really hard to get a read on Gen.G overall.
Definitely. When I'm looking at these teams, I think that the big ones that have had like a big difference between what I predicted them to be and what they are, like T1 I think is playing a lot better. I think that they've actually like got out of their own way. The thing about T1 is they've just essentially had bad drafts like the whole year. And not only did they have bad drafts, they have bad drafts for the players on their team. Like they don't understand who's on their team. Like for some reason, they still thought that Gumayushi was the carry and that Zeus was like a weak side top laner. And now it looks like they're actually being like, wait, hold on. What happens if Gumayushi plays the weak side? Like we just give him Callista and then he ults the Soraka out. So he enables Keria, just save Keria. Like that's more important than you actually winning lane. And we have Zeus play like GP and Fiora and all these picks, which was for me, like this was the big surprise because I didn't think that they were going to play carry tops. It seemed like in LCK, they decided they just threw Zeus to the wolves. They were just like, you're playing tanks every game. You're playing Mordekaiser. Like even when he wasn't playing tanks, his carries were like Gnar or like Mordekaiser, those types of champions, which is essentially what you do with like a weak side top laner. That would be Impact's role within a team. Those are the champions that he would play if he was in that situation. So I think that that's a really good sign for T1 that they're starting to embrace the fact that Zeus is probably the best player on the team. I wouldn't even say probably. He is the best player on the team. Maybe you could argue Keria, but
I'll take one step further,
Go
Dom.
for it.
I think he's the leading candidate for MVP of Worlds as it stands right now.
sure.
Ooh. Him? All right, well, let's go there then. Who else would be the other top candidates that would pop up? Like I would say, wouldn't Yagao be one of them, I think, for
369
JDG?
would probably be one of them.
369, right? 999s. We keep yelling that over and over again. So JDG holding up with two.
I think the difference between, for me, with Zeus and 369 is Zeus has dominated in every single game he's played so far, whereas 369 had that Kennen game that was little bit suspect.
Well, I mean, I think the Jax game from Zeus was not the best. Like when I was looking at his Jax game versus Wonder, I mean, it doesn't look like he's as good in that matchup. I think it was Aatrox versus it was Jax versus Aatrox, as for example like Breathe, who seems to be picking that matchup all the time. So, I mean, I would say they both had a sketchy game, but at the end of the day, like the pop off performance from 369, I think
That was very good.
it was more impressive to me than the GP pop off performance just because of like the game circumstance. Like the GP was scaling but it never felt like T1 was actually behind in that game. You know, like it was like, oh, they're scaling, they're fine, whatever. It felt like JDG like really needed to lean on 369 in a lot of those team fights, or they just fucking lose. Like it felt really dire because of how far ahead the Aphelios was in that Dom 1 JDG game. So I guess that's where I would throw a distinction. And then I think Zika is actually somebody I would throw into MVP conversation so far.
Whoa.
I think he's just been playing like, I don't think he's actually one of the best players at the tournament, but I just think in terms of like what he's been playing, I mean, he's been playing a bunch of Silas and Akali games where Silas and Akali is good, and he just pops off in every single one. So
Yep. Well, he pops off in the team fights. He doesn't really pop off in lane. Like that's like
but
the
it's not
weakest
really
part of his
possible.
game. Yeah, but it is historically has been like a weak part of his game this year in particular, where he often is recovering from deficits that he has in the laning phase. But yeah, I mean, on just like I think similarly to Yagao, when Zeka gets the right champions for Zeka, he's going to look good. And because nobody's banning those champions in the meta yet, a lot of the mid laners are going to be able to get these pretty. You don't have to have a big mid lane champion pool at this Worlds. Like that's not necessary.
Any Ruler believers here, as Ruler has had himself a pretty good tournament so far?
I don't think he's had a good tournament for his standards. I think him and Viper have been like the two ADs that I thought were like the best in the world by far. And I think Ruler's been like okay. I mean, he had some good games in week 2. He also had like bad games in week 1 where like
Sure.
for example, the first time they played CFO where I'm like, Ruler, come on, you're on Caitlyn. Like you're supposed to be just like taking over. Where I just don't feel like he's been playing at that same level. So to me, I wouldn't say that Ruler's been as impressive as I expected, or like I just don't think he's been playing up to the level that he played at in LCK.
Is there an AD carry that could get that? Who is playing like at a high level at that role that we know has had the power shifted away from them from playoffs? Anyone?
I mean, I think Ruler did have a strong week too, and especially over the course of the day. But I also know that RNG was super sick, and like those were the last matches of the day, right? And when we're getting to like 9-10 at night East Coast time for that tiebreaker, like as somebody who's had COVID, you feel like real shit at that time of day.
Okay.
You feel like real shit. So even though I think they were great in those games, I think it's hard to believe that Gala and Ming were necessarily at their best in those later matches.
We will be talking about 7 Eastern teams moving forward with Rogue as well, making it on through. Out of the Western teams, so I assume we're looking at EU here, but we could also throw out NA. Who here is a team that you thought might have been able to make it through and disappointed as they fumbled the bag in week 2?
I mean, for me, it was Fnatic, because there have been some very clear weaknesses with EDG, especially around the top side of their map and jungle with Flandre. So this is it. I mean, we've seen just the level of dominance that Zeus had put on display in that group, and as good as Viper and Scout and Mako are, I don't think JJ or Flandre has probably been the weakest top laner of any Eastern team, I would say, at this tournament. And then JJ has been okay, but not outstanding. And I thought, especially with the individual performance that we had seen from Humanoid, who was quite good overall this Worlds, that we might actually be able to see a Western team do well, or perhaps even just play in a tiebreaker, right, with EDG. But unfortunately, I mean, they did super bad in week number 2. I don't really even understand why they were drafting the things they were drafting against Cloud9. Like, that was an super disappointing game to me, because like I don't want to see Hylissang playing flanking Soraka. Razork looks like he doesn't have Jarvan mechanics. Like he was just mechanically bad on the champion. Not using like the EQ flash to secure ganks and just like I just don't understand what the purpose of the composition that they ran against Cloud9 was. And if they don't win that game, all of a sudden, a lot of the other games in the day start to matter a lot less, or they're tilted or what have you. And I was encouraged by the fact that they went back to some of their strengths versus T1 and EDG. But I think they should have at least been competitive for that slot. And so that was disappointing to me. That was I think Fnatic's like strategy going in was super weird, super unlike Fnatic. And I don't know why you would do that against a team like Cloud9. When if you just play standard Fnatic style, I think you just win that game.
35 seconds between the average time of their losses against T1 and EDG. It was 29:07 and 29:42, and both of those were kind of quite
They're
one-sided.
stomped.
I mean,
Yeah,
look, I was very nervous in the final game versus EDG when Hylissang locked in Nautilus because I know how that goes.
And it went.
Yeah.
I've seen this one before. Yeah, I don't know. Fnatic was very disappointing. I really did expect more out of them, especially given their play-ins and the hot start that they got. Yeah, it was just against play-ins team, but considering they had no practice, right? We knew they had COVID. They didn't even have their full roster. If anything, I think it was probably a mistake to put Hylissang back into this roster, given his performance, because he was not good. And Rux actually looked very good. And whether it's a form issue or not, Rux was immediately comfortable, was immediately impactful, and was not running it down as much as Hylissang was.
Yeah, for me, I kind of always expect Fnatic to let me down. So at this point in the year, I was ready for it. I felt the letdown coming, and it's one of those things where you start thinking about when a team starts attacking you in draft, what are the responses going to be? And I couldn't come up with like responses that I thought would be good for Humanoid. Like if the Azir is banned, like what is he going to be able to carry the team on? Because that's really what he needed to do a lot of the time. I mean, Hylissang's having a bad tournament. Razork is super coin flip, and I mean, just Wonder has a really tough job. In top lane in general versus Eastern tops. I mean, even if Flandre is the worst Eastern top, which I mean, maybe I'll probably throw King in that conversation.
Yes, for sure. The Flandre versus King and Banger is coming up in quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Though, Tom, don't you worry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be something. They're gonna be playing top lane, that's for sure. But anyways,
they'll be existing there on tanks.
Yeah, they will. Well, I think that. Well, I mean, maybe we might even see them start playing carries because they might think the other guy is so fucking bad they can get away with one of their carries. So
I look forward to the Flandre Fiora versus the King and Camille, the two banger champions that I really want to see these guys play. That they think they can play.
Yeah, they for some reason think that those are champions that are suited to their skill sets. But I will say,
my God.
Like Wonder, like still I wouldn't say has a massive advantage over somebody like Flandre. So when I was looking at Fnatic matchup, I really feel like week one was more of a surprise than like that being their standard level of play. And honestly, from what I've seen with Fnatic, they might be better when they don't practice. Maybe like them not scrimming is actually the way that this team would be better, because throughout the year, every single time that they had time to prep, like you would just see them come out and it would just somehow always disappoint. So yeah, I mean, for me, I can't say that there was any like Western. I mean, maybe Cloud9 getting a win would have been surprising. Like I don't think that
the real disappointment was that my 018 parlay at 15-1 odds was ruined by the first game of
by the first
week.
game. That was exactly what I was thinking about. I was like, yeah, Cloud9, but also Monty, we just lost all the money.
To be fair, it wasn't very much money because I put a small bet because they're like 15-1, right? I just did it for the lulls. But I was really angry that I couldn't perpetuate because I thought it was going to last until Sunday when we got 100 Thieves versus Flying Oysters, and that was going to be the critical game. But Fnatic just decided to play Razork on Jarvan and Hylissang on Soraka and not know how to play these champions immediately.
All I gotta say is on one of the shows I predicted three wins, 15 losses for NA, and that came true. So that should literally count as my NostraDOMus take for this week on this show. Like I should get extra credit.
You've had lots of NostraDOMus calls, especially from week one into week two. We will get to NostraDOMus later on in the show, but this was Galaxy Brain Club, where we dished out what we thought where we dished out the results of what we had expected. It's a little disappointing there for the West, but That's what we thought. Next up, though, it's the fallout from the, I guess, from the results from groups. It's Monty's turn to go with a rant with Tough to Swallow.
All right,
All right.
guys. This is tough to swallow. I'm going to introduce myself, Dgon,
See,
here.
got it.
This is where I wade into the minefield because you guys, you guys can chime in how you can about this rant about LCS and where it's going. Obviously, guys, we had some really interesting news this week. The rumors of LCS moving to Wednesdays and Thursdays, where potentially they will lose their very important hosting from LEC. Now, if you guys don't know, as somebody who pays very close attention to LCS and LEC viewership, you, if you had an astute eye, may have noticed that this year, when LEC is ending while the LCS games are on, there is massive viewership on the LEC, including in PGL, the post-game lobby, which can have 60,000 viewers at some points in time. Meanwhile, a literal game of League of Legends that is happening in LCS will have 25,000 viewers during that same time period. And so getting the AFK viewers and the European viewers who are actually still watching to host into LCS has been incredibly important for LCS viewership. I shudder to think about what LCS viewership would be if these hosts or raids, whatever you want to call them, were not occurring. So the question is there going to be more LEC? Are they moving to LEC days as well? Because that will be crucial to maintaining LCS viewership. Also, time zones. On a weekday, guys, it's going to have to suck for somebody. And if I had to guess, if you live on the West Coast of America, it's going to suck for you. Because they're going to start those games at 1 p.m. or noon, and you're going to be at work because they've got 5 hours to deal with. And the ideal time for America would probably be, I don't know, like 4 p.m. Pacific. So it runs from 7 to midnight over on the East Coast, where the majority of the American population lives. But if you do that, no Europeans can watch. So pretty sure those people who live in California, who live in the mountain time zone, Colorado, even some of you who might live like Dom in Texas, you may not be able to watch the start of some of these games if you're still at work or school during those hours, because somebody's got to take the hit if it's on a weekday and you have to start earlier. Right now, it's quite easy for European fans to watch in the evening. Now, Riot might have some data about, oh, the time zone is going to be better. But that only matters if you get those hosts. So is LEC going to start immediately before that? Are they expanding to more days of LEC? These are all questions that have to be answered. Now, on top of that, you may be thinking, well, I'd still watch it at those times. In fact, personally, I prefer these times. But I also like that Friday Night League or Monday Night League thing that they had that crushed viewership and nobody watched, even though it was the best games of the week. So I think I might be in the minority here. And if you're looking at the teams, well, got some bad news for you two guys. Papa Smithy just made an announcement that he's no longer going to be in charge of 100 Thieves as their GM because, as he says, there is a difference in the direction for 2023 versus when he signed up in 2019. So let's talk about what that might mean. I think we can have some pretty accurate speculations here because he spells it out. He says, I signed up to have a strong, League of Legends team that was contending for titles. Indeed, he did. He's been in the last 3 finals. He's won one of them. They had a very robust academy and even amateur system at 100 Thieves that he has been very proud of developing in terms of recruiting North American talent and running them through the 100 Thieves system, either into 100 Thieves or indeed into other teams within the LCS. So all I can say is if he says it's going to be different next year, is there going to be less talent development in North America? That doesn't sound like a great thing. Is 100 Thieves not going to be spending as much money in order to support a top tier roster? Well, that doesn't sound like a good thing either. That's what I interpret these sentences to mean from Papa Smithy. And I guess we'll just see. But remember, 100 Thieves, remember how you guys were like you said so publicly, oh, yes, we love League of Legends. We're all in. Then when you won the title, all those people in your organization who had never said shit about League of Legends before suddenly were throwing a party on social media. Well, I guess we're just going to see if your money where your mouth is, or are you just going all in on Valorant instead? We'll know soon enough, won't we? That'll be fun for me as I remind you when I made those tweets about how you guys just ignored LOL for years that you had the team and then suddenly decided you were interested. Are you still interested? I don't think so. As for other budget cuts, this is just the beginning, guys. I've told you this before, but NA doing badly at Worlds, those 3 and 15, that's just going to be a smoke screen for getting rid of imported talent and high salary players. The new excuse from NA teams who cut their budgets before that result happened, by the way, they had to set up their budgets for next year to get their rosters together before they knew the results of Worlds. Well, a bunch of teams are going to be like, well, guys, we did bad at Worlds, so now it's time to pivot to North American talent. And they're just going to get away with it. Sadly, they're just going to get away with it. The World's poor showings will continue into the future as they try and develop talent, something that the NA teams as a whole have kind of been notoriously bad at, outside of a few bright spots like Team Liquid, Cloud9, and 100 Thieves. And not only that, but on the broadcast, guys, welcome to more budget cuts. Remember Pastry Time? Well, he only made his announcement because he had finished at Worlds. Enjoy seeing more casters make their announcements as Worlds go on about not being on the broadcast next year, as LCS slashes their budget and changes the broadcast as well. Enjoy your fewer casters, weekdays, lower budget, and of course, literal who's playing in LCS next year. Won't that be fun?
That's a lot to swallow right there. I got a cool Counter Logic Gaming sweater that you can see right here. I don't know. I think for me, Monty had, I think, almost everything that is on the horizon, like almost all of it. How budget cuts affect a wider range than just players getting picked up or who is playing on the stage. And so I appreciate that, Monty. And a lot of fans that were there at New York didn't understand that. They're like, well, why didn't they just spend more money? Because then you could win and then you make more money. It's like, that's not how it works. That's literally not how it works, homies.
No, it's not. I mean, and the fundamental problem with LCS, right, is that there isn't a motivating factor for orgs to spend more money to move from 10th place to 6th place. Like that, it's all the same. So you either like shoot for the moon to try and go to Worlds, or you just go budget. Like those are the only two choices.
Yeah, the only team I can see doing that is because they've had a shift in ownership. It's FlyQuest, which traditionally hasn't done that, but it's a new ownership group, so maybe they do that.
So obviously, guys, that rant, was intended to be for it was truthful, but also like I played it up for entertainment. To Dgon's point, who's gonna present some counterpoints. There are rumors, and what I've heard is that both FlyQuest and Golden Guardians will be increasing spending next year. Now, the difference is going to be it's not going to be at the same level as all of these teams have been doing in the past, but they will. The word is that they're going to be spending more money, and there are certain players like Core JJ that might be picked up on good rosters by these teams in order to form to encourage more players to come over and molding a new roster in the Core JJ image or other veteran players. So you'll see some of that for sure, but the spending as a whole is going to go down.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. Go ahead, Dom.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, increase in spending for Golden Guardians is like what, you spend $5 instead of $0. Like anyone could spend more than Golden Guardians. So like, I mean, to me that means nothing. I feel like Golden Guardians is like one of the most like disgusting like leech orgs. That's like, I mean, if people want to talk about what's killing the LCS, like Golden Guardians was from the beginning just a shit org that is there to leech off LCS, and they just want to exist. Like the things that they did in 2021 should have got them kicked out of the league. The fact that they went with they literally were getting collegiate players and put them on the team straight into LCS. They just tanked the entire time, abusing the fact that there's no relegation. I fucking hate that org, man.
Look, man, I don't blame the teams because the teams are actually hurting the most in the esports space right now. And I think it's illogical for the teams to spend a bunch of money when they don't see any kind of return. Right? That's the problem, is that, again, there isn't a motivation to move from 10th place to 6th place because you don't make more money by being 6th place instead. So why would you spend that money? Riot has to fix the broken revenue model for the teams. And you can tell that they agree with this because they did it differently in Valorant. It's clearly not working. Like paying developers money to be part of franchise leagues when it is a marketing exercise where they make the money from the skins and then never tell you what that money is. Riot's doing it right now. They should pay the teams to be involved, which is what they're doing in Valorant. That's the way you can fix this. You fix it, Riot. Take some of your skin money and just give it to the teams. Then maybe you'll have better teams.
For me, when I look at a company like Golden Guardians, it's like, what about like the other parts of just using the fact that you have a team in the LCS for branding and creating your own content? Like where are their own like video pieces? Where is like they have marketing people. I don't like, look, I'm a fucking single crackhead existing in Texas. How am I somehow like creating more content than your company that has content teams and marketing and like all these people that know what the fuck they're doing?
I mean,
like,
Dom, you make more money than their company though, so
I wasn't given the budget to do that. Like, I really wasn't.
I mean, maybe, but that's on them. Like, they should be able to figure out something. I mean, they have the people that have degrees, right? They should be able to do something for themselves. And it just feels like Golden Guardians is
a joke, Dom. I bet you do actually make more money than their company.
I mean, I hope not. I'm not making that much money. Like, that would be really sad. Like, I really hope that's not the case.
I'm not sure how much Clorox is paying Golden Guardians, but it might not be enough.
I mean, my point is just like, I don't see anything good coming from that organization. It's just year after year disappointment. They just exist as like an 8th place team. The only time they ever had a good team, they immediately sold it off. They claim that they just don't have enough money. It's like, yeah, you're backed by the Golden State Warriors, so there's access to capital. Just whoever is the one that's convincing the person above you like what to spend, like that person is just not able to sell it to the people that actually have the money. I mean, the money is definitely there within that ecosystem. So I don't know. I really hope that that Riot does something about the teams and like just like the clear, like, I mean, if the teams don't give a fuck, how are fans gonna give a fuck? That's what I would ask.
And it was proven.
I agree.
I just no one showed up. No one showed up week 1. No org showed up. It was CLG.
Yep. I mean, I agree with you, Dom. I just think that the target needs to be different. Like the teams need to be motivated to perform, and the whole system needs to be redesigned in order for that to happen. The teams aren't going to, I mean, some teams are going to spend money in it and not achieve any results, but a lot of the teams are just not going to do that. So you have to incentivize them. As a reminder, outright bets on the League of Legends World Championship will be closing at the start of quarterfinals over on esportsbet.io. Now, this means it'll be your last chance to declare who you think will be the winner. And if you're particularly crazy, maybe you go ahead and you put a little flyer here onto Rogue at 250 to 1 odds. Yes, it's a long shot, but let's believe in the European miracle run together. Put $5 on that one, and we can see if we can run it the distance. All right, guys, now back to Power Spike.
All right, so we've gone down the long rabbit hole of trying to solve the problems for Paparito again, because there was a lot there that was tough to swallow. Thank you very much, Monty, for those takes. Let's move on next with a palate cleanser with the best match of last week. It is Certified Banger. All right, so let's dive into the best match of the week. I'm going to go first because I disagree with both of you guys. You already know which one I'm picking.
God.
Yes, give
Cloud9
me the
versus
bugs.
Fnatic?
No. Actually, no. Give me the bugs. Give me 200
God.
HP on a Nexus.
That was fun.
Jesus.
Give me the revive of Levi. Guys, the MSG was popping, chanting Levi's name, chanting all of GAM's name. I had met the owner there. He's an entrepreneur from LA. He helped broker the NRG deal. And so he was excited. How could you not be excited for GAM unless you were a top esports fan? But it was really cool to see them try something different. It worked out and then have an exciting ending like they did. So for me, it was GAM Esports against top esports in day 7. It was a lot of fun. I had fun watching that one. It changed things up. But what do you guys think of that one before we get to the real certified banger?
It was very entertaining. I mean, it was extremely entertaining, and it was extremely exciting. I thoroughly enjoyed watching that game. You love to see it. The weird picks, like apparently Gam just will play set regardless. And I love the Karthus. Like, I thought it was really, really fun. I don't disagree with you, Dgon, just because it was a huge upset. It was just the ending was so fucking wild. Like the Karthus deal. I love Karthus because he's such a fun champion to watch because the ult is just so awesome every time. And it was hilarious. I mean, it was a hilarious game.
Dom, when you were climbing, I think it was last season, when you were climbing, you're a Karthus user, a Karthus enjoyer. I believe you played it in Twitch Rivals before too. So was this not entertaining for you?
It was entertaining, but at the same time, like I actually didn't think that this was that amazing of a Karthus game. Like I thought that they had a decent amount of mobility, but I mean, it ended up working. So I just feel like Karthus is a champion that is so usable that people just skip over because they don't want to meet the other conditions where you want to have like 80 mid. So in this case, they had set. I mean, there's multiple other things that are viable. If you have like a good Z angle, it could be a Z angle. Z Karthus is really powerful because it essentially just means that it's like old Zed where every time he has R, it's just a kill. Like it's essentially that same thing where you just get to snowball a Zed for free. So I would love to see more Karthus, but to be honest,
Canyon
I feel like
Canyon will play it. I'm pretty sure.
I hope so. I mean, Canyon
played it. Canyon played it the last time Dom1 and
the Bible
and
Gen.G
played each other. So.
Yep. And I think that it's actually really smart into Gen.G because I think that that's the advantage that Dom1 has over Gen.G is that their jungler is just a better carry player. So if they're able to like stabilize lanes and let Canyon do his thing, like he could be a win condition there.
All right. Well, that was my pick for it. Dom, what was your pick for certified banger this week?
I got JDG versus Dom1 in the tiebreak, the classic JDG game. That right there is like game. That's like the thing that people always say is, oh, well, I mean, if JDG has to come back all the time, that means that they have like flaws, obviously to be behind. But if you watch a team always team fight well and come back like 30 times in a row, it's very hard to still be but it's not that good, right? It's like watching somebody play Lee Sin and just win like 30 games. But Lee Sin still isn't a good champion. It's just the enemies suck. Like it's very hard.
Dom, this is so reminiscent of SKT in 2015 when they were on their world championship run, which was actually one of, if not the most dominant world championship run that we've had in history. And they would constantly be behind it at 20 to 30 minutes. And when I was there, the other casters would be like, oh my God, I can't believe they're behind. I'm just like, just wait for it. Just wait for it. It doesn't matter. They're just going to win this game. And it makes people frustrated because the game doesn't go how they think it's going to go. But if we're honest here, JDG was never that far behind Dom1 Kia. What had happened was, I think people's perception of this game, because they saw Dgon getting so fed in the bot lane, they kind of ignored the fact that the top side of the map was in a very terrible state for Dom1 Kia, like very terrible. And when you see, unfortunately, even though the Aphelios gets fed, they didn't have a significant amount of peel for Aphelios or a way to stop a Vi ult. And then, of course, like, the Yagao stealing the Maokai ult or the Aurelia ult and getting on top of Dgon with those. And then 369 finding a flank
or Leona ult. Or Leona ult for Yagao as well.
Yeah. So, it was actually very problematic, I think, Dom1's composition. And it coupled with this Showmaker with this low damage LeBlanc build was not exactly helping as the members of JDG got tankier and tankier. So Dgon was the only source of sustained damage on this composition. And the longer the game goes on, they don't have a way to protect him to do that sustained damage. And it was basically free for JDG to dump everything into Dgon because when he's dead, they just win the fight through attrition. And also, I mean, like Kai'Sa getting into the back line and assassinating him. Like Kai'Sa's still useful, even though Hope was really far behind, because you can just sacrifice Hope to jet into the back line and try and kill the Aphelios. And if Hope dies, like whatever, like we traded up in that scenario. So I think Dom1 really needs to think about their compositions, because I think that was a huge issue here. And if they had potentially a different mid laner, like they banned the Azir it was certainly possible to play something that would have been higher damage, right? Could have played the Victor here, and I think they probably would have had a somewhat better time because at least they would have had to pick whether to kill Victor or Aphelios for the most part. And then Nuguri too. Like, look, man, I love Nuguri's Aurelia, but that was really terrible.
Insider information coming from Ashley King. Not that much insider. She said Nuguri on stream would say Aatrox is strong, so I need to figure out what my counter is, and I'm gonna play Aurelia. And here was his time. He followed up. He called his shot. 1-8-2.
I mean, he was getting dove, and like the pressure was all going there because basically JDG just abandoned bot side because it was going so badly, so they had to find an advantage somewhere else. But this was, I don't think this was ever like JDG being super far behind, but it was really fun to watch this game, and it was really fun, especially to watch 369 on the Aatrox just absolutely dominate these fights. But part of the blame has to go over to Damwon for having what ended up being a pretty bad composition come the late game.
Final thoughts, Dom?
I mean, I just think in general, this is like why I think JDG is such a hard team to play and why teams should be scared of JDG. I think that a lot of, I mean, this is a point I made before, but just to reiterate it, the thing that I think makes a championship team, especially at a tournament that doesn't have double elimination, is the ability to like grind out a best of 5, because a lot of these teams are going to end up being pretty similarly skilled once we get to like the later stages of the tournament. And you're not going to be able to just like roll over them like 3-0. So in the games like where JDG is losing, and even if they end up losing those games, like even the first game versus Goblin, the fact that they always play the team fights in a way that makes sense. They have such good fundamentals in that regard. I think that is something that's very hard for teams to like grind out versus them. So I mean, if a team beats JDG, you could say that like, yeah, they're just better right now than JDG, but JDG will never like lose the mental game. It feels like, and I think that's extremely important going forward.
They also just see angles of engagement and timing, like windows and macro play that no other team sees. Like I don't even like, I don't see them a lot of the time. I'm like, holy shit. Like I didn't even know they could engage right there in that situation from that distance away. Yeah. And they're all in, like, it's crazy.
Yeah, if you, I really love seeing the way that they play around Drake, because if you watch like a lot of their Drake fights, they'll spread super thin, like 5-man over the Drake wall, and then they'll just like all commit at the same time, like forward, like onto onto a singular target, which I think is really unique. I think a lot of other teams, like, I mean, it must be crazy to even get to the point where you're making those calls. Like, yeah, can we engage? Like, yeah, I mean, we all have flashes over the wall. Like, we have comps that make sense. I think that is another thing that. Here, I think the vibe pick was actually really good because they have LeBlanc that struggles with being locked down, plus an Aphelios, which struggles with being locked down. And they combo that with 5 champions that can dive, right?
Yep.
On their team, Nautilus ult into the back line.
Yep.
Yagao obviously can do that with Silas, especially taking Mykles, whatever. Aatrox dive into the back line, no problem. And then Kaisa could just bypass the entire front line herself and get into the back line as well with the ulti. So I think that JDG is just like a really like scary team. I mean, that's why they're my pick to win the whole tournament, because I feel like the resiliency of the team is really, really underrated. Yeah. And no team is playing perfect league right now. There's no team where you're looking at them and you're like, oh yeah, this team doesn't make any mistakes. So in that type of world championship where there's not like this massive front runner, the teams that can grind it out, I think, are always going to be like the ones that I predict to win or think I have the highest chance of winning.
My favorite JDG moment that I think really exemplified their style this tournament was in their first game against EG, where EG was actually like doing pretty well in the early game. And Cowrie's just in mid lane, like trying to shoot a max range Varus arrow just to poke them. And then all of a sudden he's just dead. And I was like,
yeah, it was full chase.
Yeah, there it is. I was like, there it is. Like, Cowrie didn't even know. He's never seen an engage like that in his entire existence. He's like, I'm safe here shooting this arrow at max range. I'm like, oh, no, you're not. You're just instantly dead. There's the 5 people on you immediately. But like, they're the team that does that, right? It's them and to a lesser degree, T1 will also pull maneuvers like that. But nobody's better at it than JDG is, for sure.
Well, friends, that's 75 minutes, if you count both games there, of certified banger action. Make sure to go back and watch it. You'll see all the things that we just talked about on display. All right, next up, we revisit the future teller to certify how great of a future teller he is, and then he'll go back and tell us more of the future in NostraDOMus. All right, Dom, you made 2 major predictions in our segment. You also made a third one that Lulu was like important and was going to pop up, but that wasn't in this segment, so that one doesn't count.
Okay.
But still,
All right.
you made 2 major predictions. One of them was about Fnatic, and the other one was about Rogue. It was Azir's going to be permabanned from Humanoid, and that was a main win condition for Fnatic. And then on the opposite side, LCS has gotten Maokai every single time and will never be able to touch champion again. And it wasn't me, but there were some naysayers out there that didn't believe you. That, you know, they've been watching LEC since they came out the womb, Dom. And so they said that you're an idiot and something along those lines. Can we pull that one up, please? And Dom, you can go ahead and read that for us.
My favorite thing about Dom is that he goes into the YouTube comments and like Reddit comments and just mauls. And I'm like Dom, like just don't look at it. You know, you can't be cyberbullied if you just walk away from the screen. But then he cyberbullies back, and I am very entertained by it. So I'm looking forward to this.
I love stuff like this. It's not only just this comment, but it's not even like the fact that they disagree. I'm no problem with that. I mean, obviously people are going to disagree. I'm going to have NostraDOMus predictions that are wrong, but just the confidence displayed by the opening line of "It's so fucking hilarious that Dom and Monty talk about EU teams having a hard time because they can't pick Azir or Maokai anymore. Out of the 3 losses of EU this Worlds, 2 were against Yuumi, who has a 100% win rate so far and looks completely broken. And it's insane to talk about the early game from T1 against Fnatic, and Fnatic only won because of it, and then not talk about the level from ED, the level 1, I assume, from EDG versus Fnatic. Before, which is German for before, so clearly an EU fan here. Before Worlds, pretty much all of those analysts have downplayed EU so much. Most of them put Fnatic in last place, and pretty much no one gave EU teams a shot of making it out of groups. Actually, I did have Rogue making it out of groups. I had Rogue and Top making it out of Group C. So just saying, like, that one ended up being true. And then after an impressive week 1, they still get downplayed. And it was only early game luck and draft. Didn't say anything about luck. It was early game and draft, which are both physical things that are very easy to change. They're very practical ways to attack a game, since both of those can be prepped for behind the scenes. Like, what the fuck are those guys talking about? Yes, Azir is the mid laner right now, but Knight still lost 2 games with him, while Humanoid styled on Scout and Faker playing it. It's almost like Knight is not a good Azir. I mean, he's a fine Azir, but he's not as good as Humanoid is on the pick. But Knight is actually really good on things like Silas, things like Akali. So that's what you're hoping for in the Knight example. Look, all I'm saying is, I mean, if this didn't come true, like, what was it, 1-9 for EU in week 2? The only win came against GAM. They didn't get a tier 2 turret versus a major region. That shit's the reverse NA in week number 2. The only difference is their week 1 was better than the NA week 2. But my point is, like, I don't think that this was a ridiculous prediction anyway. So I mean, I just found the comment pretty funny. That being said, Fnatic didn't win a game. Azir was banned every single time. G2 didn't look good. Maokai was banned from Odo, and Rogue looked like a completely different team once Maokai was banned from them. So that's all I'm saying there. Now on to the NostraDOMus take for this week. I think Canyon is going to gap Peanut. I think that Peanut has a bad read on this meta. I don't think that Peanut realizes who he is. He thinks that he's the Graves guy, but he's not the Graves guy. Like, he's just not that guy, pal. You know who's the Graves guy? Canyon is the fucking Graves guy. Canyon is the Graves, Viego, Lee Sin god. He is the carry jungler of this tournament. I think Canyon is going to destroy Peanut, and I think it's going to be up to the rest of Gen.G to carry them across the line. I think that Canyon is going to have an absolute banger. You know, the guy's going to put up like 60 points. It's going to be like Jordan in the fucking playoffs with the Chicago Bulls in the 80s. It's going to be crazy. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to have to 1v9 it. Look, I don't know if it's going to be enough to put them over the line, but as long as Domwon is not drafting Maokai for Canyon, I think that he can really cook something up and challenge Gen.G. I think this series is going to be a lot closer than people expect, and I think it's going to be because of Canyon.
To be fair to Gen.G, in the second week of competition, yeah, we did see the Graves from Peanut, but he was also like back up, Trundle and Vi in the second week of competition. So maybe we'll see something different, more focus on potential like early game or junglers that are not carries that help support the carries that are on his roster.
He's gonna need to pick Maokai himself. Peanut needs to pick Maokai himself, sit in the jungle and pray. Just, I know that this guy has nightmares about that game 5 Nidalee performance in spring in the semifinals. He has nightmares about that. Look, that's a game where, I mean, look, Peanut ended up winning that game.
You don't mentally come back from that one.
No. You do not want to be playing against Canyon. Canyon is in my opinion, like the GOAT jungler. I think he's just I mean, he's been so good for so long at this point, and he's still so good on the carries, and it's his meta. I believe in my boy Canyon.
In 2 games for Peanut here in week 2, 6-0 and 2-0. Pretty, maybe not 2-0. That's not necessarily the carry performance you want to grade, but still 2-0. In one game, it was 11-0 for Canyon. Just one. It only took one. So there you have it. And that 6-0 was against Flying Oyster. So.
Yeah, he did die once in 4 games, though. He didn't have a bad week. But I'm all about this. I actually think the Dom 1 versus Gen.G series is going to be a fucking banger. So people who are thinking like, even if you think Gen.G was at their top form, right? They always played Dom 1 close in the regular season.
Absolutely.
Those games were really, really close. They almost lost the best of 3 to Dom 1 the second time they played them in the round robin in summer.
Dom1 hasn't been able to beat Gen.G yet, but all I'll say is there's a reason that Dom1 picked Gen.G picked Sandbox and not Dom1 in LCK. There's a reason.
I mean, I called that before it happened too. I knew they were not going to pick Dom1. Like that was actually
and Dom1 looked weaker than Sandbox. Like Sandbox was looking probably at their peak at that point. Like they were actually, being psychopaths or getting ahead in most of their games. So I don't think Gen.G likes play against Dom1. I think that they still, like all those players, you got to remember, even though Dom1 is not the same Dom1 that it was, all these players on Gen.G have been getting their ass beat by Dom1 players for like years. Like they've been having nightmares about Canyon and Showmaker for years at this point. So look, I think this is going to be a banger best of 5. I think Canyon's going to fucking pop off.
Was that game the trade Dragon for Nexus? Sandbox Gen.G?
No, that was that was KT, I believe.
That's KT does that. KT does that.
Yeah.
That's the KT special.
Yeah, that was KT.
I was going there for a close, but instead we'll just close it like this. The banger, or I guess the prediction of the week here by NostraDOMus, it's going to be a canyon-sized canyon gap between him and
Jungle Canyon.
There we go. All right, so we've got our predictions in. Let's go look back at last week at a moment that we wish could get redone with Remake. All right, so Remake, last week we had a couple of moments that we hoped that a lot of players we wouldn't want to see again. This week, I think we've got a couple of leading candidates. So Monty, let's start with you. What is a moment or time or thing that happened that you wish did not happen last week?
I mean, I think we all know the answer to this one. Obviously, it's the Malmortius bug that happened at the end of Top versus Gam. I wish we could have remade that in the moment. I wish there was something that could be done, but unfortunately you would have to remake that game and then replay all the other games after it. And for those people who are like, oh no, you just have to play the one game. No, because it affected the rest of the group. Once the other two teams know that they are in 100% into the next round of competition, they may have been holding back certain strategies or champion picks that they didn't want to show until the quarterfinals. Like, we're just never going to know if DRX's or Rogue's decision making was altered by that loss. So you'd have to replay everything. And that's just not feasible, especially because by the time it was discovered by the Chinese fans or whatever, it was a situation where some of those players might have already been on planes home the next day, because Riot sends players out real fast after they get eliminated. And also
no free hotels, baby.
And also, like, what happens? what happens with the venue? Do you have to like redo all of those matches on Monday when you maybe don't have the venue rented, or people might not be available who are crewing the event? It's just a nightmare. It's impossible to replay those games from a financial and logistical perspective.
That's why they didn't replay the games that RNG won because of ping at MSI. They just didn't. Oh wait, never mind. They replayed those games. Oh shit.
Sure. The difference is that it didn't. You don't have to replay like all six games that happened.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Day. Yeah, I mean, there's a limit.
I mean, look, I knew they weren't going to do anything. I think it just shows like that the game is really. I mean, there's been so many bugs. Like this is not the only bug. Just the amount of bugs that have been happening. There was the dive that happened to Top Esports as well that they got fucked over. I don't know if you guys saw the bug versus DRX in the first time they met, where Kingen threw a boomerang and it like redirected in a direction that it should never redirect, and it actually just hit wayward, and that made him like super diveable. So yeah, proc the hyper proc too. It was like really fucked up. So Top Esports is just out there getting fucked like by all types of bugs. But I mean, I think that in the end, a team like Top, they underperformed. They shouldn't make it onto the next round. Like this just goes to show when you have an extremely like fickle beginning to your tournament like that, you got 6 games to fucking decide everything. You've got to just perform every fucking game. You can't let Riot fuck you. Don't let Riot fuck you, because they're gonna try. Don't let it happen.
Yeah, that was the big one. I think for me, same game. It was wow, okay. GAM, they have control of the game, weirdly enough. They were going to Elder, and I think it's whoever was casting made the call. It might have been Freak. I think it was Levi missed the biggest smite of his career. I had already the tweet typed out. I was ready to go. And right before I hit send, I like start see the base defense. I still hit send because I'm like, I'm sure they're going to lose here. And then they hold it with 200 HP. They go run down, and the rest is history. So I guess the remake there is for Levi to be like, just hit that smite, dude. Just hit that smite, and then you don't have to go through that whole roller coaster of emotion that a lot of people will forget, but you will have for the rest of your life. But great job there by GAM to close it on out, and great job Riot Coding for making sure they had the opportunity to do so with no mob popping there. That was our big remake of the week. And to close it out here, let's head on over to Keep or Kick. Dub, Monty, we have been talking about format for almost a year, maybe 2 years now. And we got ourselves a great bracket draw. Everything's fine.
Hold up. Look, it's not bad. The most important thing happened, which is that JDG is on the opposite side of the bracket as Gen.G and Dgon. That was the most critical, I think, thing that had to happen, because having more JDG versus Dgon games, given what we've seen so far, would be extremely exciting. Unfortunately, like, I would have preferred like Gen.G versus EDG and DRX versus Dgon in quarterfinals, but we'll take what we can get. I'm excited about T1 versus RNG MSI rematch too. That's fun.
There we go. So we got ourselves a pleasant draw. It was a perfect no, but a pleasant draw. So I thought it would be fun to play a game of Keep or Kick based off of what side of the bracket you would like to be on. Would you rather be on the top side? Would you keep the top side of the bracket, or kick the top side of the bracket compared to the bottom side of the bracket? So, Monty, let's start with you. Would you rather be top side bracket or bottom side bracket?
I would keep the top side of the bracket and kick the bottom side of the bracket.
Why is that?
So, while we're going to probably get a very good series between DRX and EDG, it's because they're both not very good. In fact, you could make an argument that they are perhaps the 2 weakest teams in the entire bracket. Maybe if you're a rogue homer, you might make that argument. They're at least among the bottom 3. Let's put it that way. So the fact that they're playing each other means that we probably won't get a one-sided stomp in that game, especially because they mirror each other's strengths weirdly, right? That nobody's going to, like, Kingen's not going to exploit Flandre. Flandre's not going to exploit Kingen. Both junglers have been not incredible. And then you have a kind of interesting mid lane matchup combined with like 2 powerhouse AD carries. and both teams probably trying to play through the bot side. So it could just be a bloodbath in the bot lane, and then Viper and Def carrying, which will be fun. Also, it's Def versus his former team, so the narrative is fun. And even though Gen.G and Dom1 Kia might be the best quarterfinal matchup, the rest of that side of the semis probably going to be dog shit. It'll be either Gen.G or Dom1 beating up on whoever beats DRX and EDG, and a free walk into the finals. So even though JDG versus Rogue is likely to be very one-sided, T1 versus RNG should be close. And then the semifinal of JDG versus either T1 or RNG should be really cool, I think, in this meta. So I would take the top side.
I'm with Monty here.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. Go ahead, Dom.
Yeah, I'm with Monty here. I mean, I think that there's a lot of just exciting matchups. I mean, T1 versus RNG. I mean, I'm really excited for Dom1 versus Gen.G as well. I think that's going to be a banger. But interregional, and the other thing is like T1 and RNG fan bases just fucking hate each other. So like, I just feel like it's just going to be an absolute banger. I mean, I just really hope
it's always awesome when two fan bases you don't like duke it out with each other too. It's so satisfying because either way you win by watching those fans lose.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. And then also you have like the MSI rematch, and then if T1 ends up, and here's the other thing, this is something Nelson pointed out to me. T1 has side selection here. So now they can just win all the games on blue side, because that's apparently why RNG won MSI. So you got that as well. I just really hope that RNG is able to recover, because apparently they're, I mean, they just looked fucking terrible on the cams.
I mean, they should be over the worst of it by now. And at least, they don't play till what, Friday? So they they'll have a week basically to get better.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about, say, like the announcements about EDG and JDG these days, because they might be in the thick of it, especially because we got the announcement that Yagao has COVID and he plays on Thursday, like the first game. That might be bad.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Apparently his symptoms are not that bad from what they said. Like he's not super sick. I mean, EDG is apparently also like really sick. Apparently their bot lane is just isolating. They're not even able to scrim. I feel like this is just such a I don't know how this ended up happening, where everyone's ending up getting like COVID, but I feel like maybe they needed to have better preventative measures in place. I mean, it is what it is, but I just hope that it doesn't affect the tournament too much.
I will defend it. I will be the right.
I don't know how you make this better. Like it's a bunch of people that are getting together from all over the world with a highly transmissible disease. Like I don't think Riot can really do anything about it, unfortunately.
And they did have a lot of preventative things. I think it's just the food and the amount of people that are there. Like you really didn't have opportunity. We had to test every day as media. Like we had to test to do any interviews. So I think that was just unlucky and tough from that end. But you're right. It is a lesser product because the guys are tough, and now we got to always wonder, will RNG be healthy enough? Will anyone that catches something be healthy enough as they move on to the most important matches of the year?
I just think that RNG versus T1 is super hype. Obviously, you've the inter-regional rivalry, whatever. And then on top of that, JDG either playing against T1 or RNG. I mean, I think JDG is massive favorites versus Rogue. I think they have it should be the easiest prediction for everyone out of the entire bracket. I think JDG versus either of those teams will be huge. Whereas on the bottom side, I think that there's not a semifinal matchup that I could be even close to that hype for. Let's say it's Dom1 versus EDG, or Gen.G versus EDG, or Gen.G versus DRX, or Dom1 versus DRX. Any of those, they just don't feel the same to me. So I think top side is actually really hype.
From a historic standpoint, though, I've got no believers in the path littered by world champions on the bottom side of the bracket. Literally, you got EDG, Gen.G with Ruler, that's still holding them up. Damwon has 3 of the same guys returning. Beryl is now over on the opposite side with DRX. This seems like really a great narrative. If EDG is the team to make it through, it seems like, all right, it's littered world champions in the LCK. This is the way that we're going to have to defend our title. I think that at least sets up for a fun narrative for whoever ends up there. But yeah, you're right. If we're going straight on quality of matches, especially for the semifinals, the top side is going to be better. Give me JDG versus whoever.
So I guess the best thing that could happen in the bottom side of the bracket would weirdly be DRX versus Dom1 Kia, because DRX has actually been a bad matchup for Dom1 this year, and for whatever reason, Pyosik always just pounds Canyon into the pavement whenever they play him, which I know sounds weird, but that's just what happens for whatever reason.
Yeah, Pyosik is just randomly good.
Exactly.
Canyon.
He's the kryptonite for Canyon. Like he really, like, I don't know. Canyon really plays badly against Pyosik for whatever reason. So at least that matchup might be close, purely just because of team stylistic reasons.
All right. Well, there you have it. That is our a keep or kick of the week, and our cake of the week. Y'all, that concludes this second week of Worlds. We've knocked it on out. As much as Dom loves to scour and find a terrible take, as I looked through the comments, there was overwhelmingly positive response towards what we did this week. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching and being involved and diving on in so immediately to the comment section and hitting all the subs that we had. It was a lot of fun. Guys, where will everyone find you for this next week? Let's start with you, Monty.
Just hanging out with Wolf and Doa on my couch watching the games. It's pretty fun. I'm upgrading the tech again this week, so that should be entertaining. But yeah, we're just chilling, just boomers on a couch.
Dom?
Boomers on a couch. It sounds like a really like awful niche porno, but okay.
Well, we have a casting couch. We have a casting couch, and we watch people get fucked on it. So I don't, it's all there. It all lines up.
it all lines up. Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm obviously doing this show, and then I'm also doing Pick'em, and then a show called Worlds Talk on my my personal channel as well as the Jungle. So I'll be on all those, and then
I'll be on the Jungle, in fact. So you should watch that too. And it will be different than this show, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, that's it.
And then you can catch any of the interviews that I pick up throughout the week on Dgon Esports. Y'all, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch y'all next week for another episode of Power Spike.